And they're obviously trying to assess what the demand impact could be from this new variant. They're also having to contend with, the strategic stockpile releases that we're seeing in consuming nations. So I think all the people who make the numbers for OPEC are getting together to try to assess what is the demand outlook. And this is going to be very, very important because this is a very, very important meeting. The U.S. has asked OPEC to continue putting 400,000 barrels a month on the market. But there's a really strong chance that OPEC's going to say no thank you and take a pause in putting more barrels on this market right now.
Well, the United States is putting more barrels on the market with that 50 million or 32 new, because 18 was previously approved, new barrels. Not a lot, but more barrels on the market from the SPR release on Tuesday. Of course, oil actually rose that day, but the markets on Friday may have done the oil market's bidding and sending prices down. I mean, I've got to imagine that Abdulaziz bin Salman, His Excellency, is looking at that and thinking, why don't we use that 3-month or 1-month pause that's in our deal to kind of sit back and see where that goes? Or, Halima, do you think that would be a little bit touchy politically?
Look, I think Abdulaziz has proven to be the oracle of this market because he has been warning consistently that we are not done with COVID. He's expressed considerable concern about COVID variants. So I do think it's really a live option for them to take a pause. And I think it would be very hard for the United States to really, go after OPEC at the moment for doing so. I mean, clearly, this is a price range now that President Biden should be happy with. I think it's a really tall ask to ask OPEC to put more barrels on the market, given the uncertainty right now about this variant.
Yeah, and demand, at least we'll see what happens, Halima, but we had, according to Gas Buddy last week, a 4-day record demand. We've never had more demand for gasoline in America in a 4-day stretch than last week. We are still seeing domestic flights that are full. Yes, international restrictions. But the market, at least here in the United States, which we are the world's leading oil consumer, many would find that unfortunate, but we are, demand, at least currently, does appear to be strong. And your colleague, Michael Tran, saying that, according to their numbers, your numbers at RBC, Friday took 120 million barrels basically off the supply-demand imbalance in terms of the dollar value. What's your take on supply and demand right now?
As you just mentioned, demand does look strong. Certainly if you look at U.S. gasoline demand, which is so important to global oil demand, it is holding up. The key thing we're watching, though, is really what happens with government action. Obviously, we've seen what Austria has done in terms of new lockdown restrictions. The question, I think, for demand will be, do governments take action to restrict mobility? And we'll clearly be watching what happens in this country. The Biden administration obviously does not want to adopt a politically unpopular lockdown again, but that would be the really big hit for demand, would be, do we get a return to lockdown restrictions?
Yeah, and just a final question again on OPEC, because it is going to be so interesting to see what the group does. If we get a pause, do you think the U.S. starts chattering about the no OPEC, the NOPEC bill again in Congress, as you have written?
I think given the sell-off that we've seen because of the variants, I do think OPEC will likely get a pass from the White House if they take a pause.